So Micke, we've been talking about coming round for a chat and a cup of tea, just to chat fishing for a long time, and recently there was a good reason for me to now finally come round. You just had what could be described as your life's best fishing, I guess.
It is, no doubt.
And I know that some people would potentially think, you know, yeah, you've just come back from Rainbow, you've caught a lot of big fish, and you know, you got lucky and it was one of those weeks where you just finally caught a lot of big fish. But I know, and I want everyone else to know, that it's not just about luck. You fished the lake for many, many years, and it's come. You're worth it. It was due to come, in my opinion.
We got a good swim this time, we did, but I think we really did the best out of it as well.
So where did it all begin? What took you to Rainbow? When was the first time you ever fished Rainbow?
It was 2007 in January, and I was in swim 21. It was freezing nights. I think I had like 5 small fish, biggest 20 pounder or something, but got me straight away.
And how many weeks have you fished Rainbow now? Do you remember? Is it every year you go? Or?
Yeah, once a year for the last like 10 years. In the beginning I usually went down 2 times a year.
So that's going to be over 40 weeks.
Yeah, I had to check the notes here. It's 42 weeks.
Wow, and there's people that would give their left arm for 1 week on Rainbow.
Yeah,
You've been very fortunate.
Really.
And it's not just around the corner either. I mean, this is a lot of money and travel for you. I mean, how long does it take for you to get to Rainbow? You used to live in Stockholm.
Yeah, then it was even worse. But when we drove home last weekend, we had a really good drive. Then it was 22 hours. 2 years ago, the ferry was cancelled because of a storm, and we had to drive another way through Denmark, and it took 32 hours. So
people who don't realise this, I mean, obviously I've done a lot of travel myself, so it's Sweden, Denmark, Germany, Holland, Belgium, France.
Yeah.
And that's just one way.
Yeah.
And then you've got to go all the way through France, because Rainbow's right down the bottom there.
Yeah. And we usually do it non-stop.
So after all these trips, you still keep going back to Rainbow. What is it about Rainbow that draws you back?
The family, it's the fish, it's the surrounding, but I think the most the kind of fishing.
It's very special fishing.
Yeah, and it suits me really well. It's kind of fishing I like. Using a boat, both for playing fish and putting baits and finding spots.
It's not everyone's cup of tea. I know some people have even sort of suggested they would never fish Rainbow with the techniques. How, I mean, it can be quite daunting when you see people with bottles and lines over trees and these, you know, specially made bars to hang the line up and fishing behind islands. I mean, but ultimately, from what I've learnt, it's actually quite safe fishing, because you're fishing very strong and very secure. The fish don't get that damaged, and from what I've seen,
the mouth of the fish are usually, there's so few fish with bad mouth. So, and I fished all those ways, and like, don't know, like the first 10 trips no one used bottles back in the days. Quite a few fish got snagged, but you could almost get all of them out if you put the time in and the right equipment. But with the bottle, it's like this trip, I think I had 2 fish that got snagged and didn't leave any tackle at all.
Yeah. So obviously, before we get to this trip, your previous trips, what have you caught there before? Have you ever caught any of the special old named fish? Have you any specific session you remember?
There's many, but my personal best from, don't know, like 10 years ago, something like that, the common of 35.2 kilos. It's really memorable fish, and it was the first fish of the trip as well. First day.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a really special one. My personal best mirror as well is even longer back, like 2009, I think, 31.9 kilos, which I matched this trip.
Wow.
But yeah, and there's so many in between. I'm pretty sure I lost Eric's common like 10 years ago. Oof. Just got close to the net.
Have you caught any of the other mirrors, like Ken Dodd's fish and all that?
No, I've netted it for friends 2 times, but not me. Had the dink, and a really old gnarly fish,
Yeah.
really special one. But I'm not so good at the names of the fish, and there are quite a lot of the big fish that don't get names.
No, of course.
So,
and that's nice about it. It's sort of a mystery still, isn't it? Even though that you go down there and you think you're going to catch, there's a lot of unnamed fish, and there's a lot of new fish coming through now.
Especially commons, big commons coming through. And it's some of the old mirrors that get names almost only.
So this trip, obviously, like I said, you've just got back, and talk us through. So time of year, who you went down with, what was the plan? Why did you choose this time of year?
Because the fishing in Sweden is almost over. You don't miss anything at home, and it's still really good down there. So that's because of October. And I went with Per-Erik. It was the third trip together with him. And
this is a week or 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah. I really do non-stop fishing. I left the island once for taking a shower and bringing more bait from the freezer. Per-Erik went couple of more times, so we could get fresh bait. But we didn't go to the shops, nothing like that. Straight 2 weeks fishing.
Solid hardcore fishing.
Yeah, and I think that resting the swim, it's of course good. Some of our neighbors did that, and they usually do. But I think in the end, if you could rest half of the swim, because you have so much water. That's what I also like with Rainbow. You get a lot of space to put your bait. If you're fishing 4 rods, you can leave big open spaces where you don't have any lines for a couple of days, or for the first week, which I did this time, and which became my best rod in the end.
So come on then. Obviously I don't want to get to the crescendo. You started in the week. How did you approach the session? Did you go in with lots of bait? Did you do what you always do? What was different about this session?
In the beginning I baited just a little bit, but for the last 5 years I usually go for 1.5 kilo per rod.
Per rod?
Yeah.
And is that every time you put a rod back out?
Yep.
Okay.
And
even if you haven't had a bite?
Yep. Maybe 1 kilo if I haven't received anything. And then I don't want to put the bait at the exact same spot, even if I think it's the right spot. I think they know where the line is. So moving it 1, 2, 3 meters in the same depth, but not the exact same spot, because they are so used to the line. And when you fish in the bottle, the line is straight out. It's so obvious to them. But if you move it around, I think that's a little advantage.
Because I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of people down there will find they'll get a bite when they go out in the boat to bring the rod up.
Yeah.
When the line is slackened off, they'll often end up getting a bite as they go out. And this happens often.
Yeah, quite often.
So they must be really line shy.
They are. And when at this like this trip, the last day we had this. I had one rod where I had this pole marker, 3 meters away from the rod. I usually try not to use markers because another line or another pole, they shy. But this spot was a bit tricky to find, so I had the pole. And at the last day I took it out, and I had 3 fish, and it was bubbling crazy. 5 minutes after I took the pole out.
Wow.
So
they were in there directly when they thought it was
waiting
safe
for
again.
the pole to be removed.
What was your baiting approach? What were you using? What was the main blend of bait you were putting in them?
Mainly big baits, but we were using SBM's OG and FP 50% of it, and in all different sizes, doubles and round baits, and chopping up a small bit as well. Not chopping in its small parts, but splitting them in halves. So a lot of big different sizes.
What's the reason for that, do you think?
I think their main diet is boilies, except for bloodworms, and they know so well how to blow out a bait. The 20mm round ball, they know exactly how they would handle it. And I think you get a little bit of a different feeding situation with different sizes. Maybe they take all the round balls first, don't know. But in the end, they are picking up the rest, and they have to feed a little bit different. And I think it's a little bit more difficult to get
maybe
rid of
make some work for it a little bit as well when everything's a bit different. And one thing I've thought about is, and I don't know if maybe this is a reason, but round baits roll away.
Yeah.
Whereas barrels will tend to roll in a circle.
Yeah.
And so I've noticed when I've had bream on the spots, the bait will stay in an area a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Is that something you consider? Or?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The bream is not a big problem, but there is bream. And I think as well, when you splitting a bait in half, it's even more difficult for a bream to push it away.
Yeah.
They could suck on it, in the end they will get it in their mouth, but it's more difficult. Yeah, and also with using 2 different flavors, I think, I want a lot of different things. And when you're only allowed to use boilies, which are in Rainbow, I want to, they should all be good, but different.
So you go in with freezer bait only, or is it ready-made as well?
No, only freezers.
It's more work, but it's worth it.
It is. I think it's worth it. A lot of our neighbors this trip and other times using ready-mades, and well, they don't have as good fishing, I would say. So no, for me it's only freezers.
So Micke, I can see you got a little notebook there.
Yeah.
What is this? This is your Rainbow book, or?
Yeah, no, it's my ordinary fishing diary.
Okay.
And my memory is not that good. And like this trip with so many fish, you have to take notes.
So before this week, which, like I said, we're gonna get to it in a minute.
Yeah.
What have you had some crazy weeks like this in the past? Have you had like weeks with no fish?
Oh.
You've had weeks with tons of fish, or?
Both.
Yeah.
I've had my least good, my poorest 2 weeks. 1 bite, 1 30-pounder.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
Another time in November, a couple of years back, I had nothing for 13 days. Absolutely not a sniff. And the last day I had a 50.
Okay.
So
yeah.
sometimes it's worth
Bitter
waiting.
and sweet.
Yeah. I think the most fish I had in the summer, like 10 years ago, I had 51 fish. But I had big fish. 27 kilos was the biggest. But
So okay, let's go straight into it then. This session, I know you're still on cloud 9.
Yeah.
How many fish did you have in total? Because you only ever tend to talk about the bigger fish. And I've asked you, how many 20-kilo fish, and you said I don't really know.
No, I do know if I really check in my notes, but I had 29 fish.
Okay.
So 2 per day.
And
because we had
Eric caught similar as well.
No, a little bit less, but he still had good fishing.
Okay.
17 fish.
Okay, so you had nearly 30 fish.
Yeah.
And what's really entertaining is, like I said, how many? I mean, talk us through. So the first few days, I mean, how did it go?
Yeah. It started with a 60 for Per-Erik, the first fish. Okay. The first day evening. A fish he had caught 2 years before.
Okay.
That's the way it started and continued as well. We had my first fish was a 50 as well.
Yeah.
Low 50 in the middle of the night. It's rolled on really. We had no really bite times. We got a couple of fish every day in any hours, day and night, morning and evening, anything. And the average size was amazing. Of course, we had a few small fish, like 8-10 kilos, but
you just slip them back.
Yeah, but 2 or 3 each. If I check it here, 21 20-kilo fish.
Wow.
Out of 29 fish.
That's a really good average.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And how many 50-pounders? So what's that, over 22.5 kilos, isn't it?
15 50-pounders, yeah.
15 50s.
Yeah.
And let's keep going. How many 60s did you have?
7. 7. And which 3 were 30 kilos.
And that's 3 30-kilo fish.
Yeah.
And that's, as we know, for the European angler, that is a target.
Yeah.
Anything over 30 kilos, I mean, we're all happy to catch a 20-kilo fish, but
yeah.
a 30-kilo is when they look like a giant in the net.
That's a submarine.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And for the rest of my fishing life, I had, before this trip, 5 30-kilo fishes, of which
So
4 are from
almost
Rainbow.
doubled it.
Yeah.
8 30 kilos. So you've had 3, and what was the biggest out of those? And I know we got congratulations coming. So one of them is it equaled your PB?
Yeah, my mirror PB.
Mirror PB,
Yeah,
which is
31.9 kilos.
Wow, and that's a big fish. And
yeah,
when you're fishing big fish venues, you know, it's all about the 30 kilo fish. It's not an easy one to break.
No.
There's only certain venues you can go to.
I usually think before a trip, I wouldn't complain if I end up with a 25 kilo as the biggest fish. But of course, it's a 60 and a 30 kilo fish is the real target. It is, but it's difficult.
And what I really like is, and I'm going to say this from a rig nerd like myself, is that when I look at your rigs that you showed me catching the fish on, and I see your yellow shrink tube, I have to look away. But you know what? You proved me wrong, because you caught plenty of big fish on that rig.
But it has a little bit of advantages that I've found out. The reason I use it is because it annoys other people. But the thing is, if you're putting the bait in, you should feel the bait down. But it could roll. It could end up in the really black silt, which are on a few spots, and the yellow shrink tube turns grey black when it stays down there for a day. Okay. So then you know you have to move your bait a little bit. So
and you were fishing a proper cocktail as well.
Yeah, most of the fish on 3 or 4 baits.
On the hair.
Yeah, yeah. Pop up in the middle, and 1 or 2 bottom baits.
A pop up in the middle.
Yeah.
What's the thinking between that?
I have fished it in the furthest away from the hook, but I don't want it to stand out like that. I don't know. I also sometimes separate the baits, so the pop-up is coming up a little bit, and the 2 bottom baits.
So what's the reason for that? What's your thinking?
I think it's more difficult for the fish to deal with.
And different?
Yeah.
Because I've definitely not seen too many people doing it.
A lot of people are fishing the bollocks rigs. I've really not tried it, but you get a little bit of the same. It stops the bream. Yeah, it does, but it's also different for the carp to deal with, I think.
I like that, and obviously it works.
Yeah.
So we can't say fairer than that.
And the yellow shrink tube.
The yellow shrink tube. Well, Micke, I've got to say congratulations. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure coming and having a chat with you and looking around your fishing little log there. I'm very impressed with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Det här finns på film. Yes! Kolla! Det kanske är pers. Det är pers. Det är sant, det är tangerat. Ja, men det får man dricka bubbel på. Tangerat är bubbel också.
Jag var inte så här snygg, verkligen inte.